Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Old Hunt, where we are still celebrating 10 years of Bloodborne. Last time, we had a little bit of a hodgepodge of an episode. I had to sort of stitch things together from another world to fill in a gap in my own because I was foolish about my recording settings. I have, double and triple checked everything this time. We should be good to go. Hopefully, we're not going to run into any issues like that again in the playthrough, but you never know. I reserve the right to stupidly forget to hit the record button at any time. I really don't want that to happen again, though. Anyway, we're back. We got to look at another version of the fight with Amygdala. We got to consider some visual implications of the lore. We got to consider some written implications of the lore. And now we're back here, and we're getting ready to head to Cainhurst Castle, where we got the invitation, the summons. We're going to answer the call. You probably have noticed that I'm running around with a spear. I thought it was sort of appropriate that in going to Cainhurst, which is where you get the sort of Reiter Palace that this thing is based off of, it would be fun to use the saw spear. I don't know if I've actually read this description before, so I figure now that I've switched to it, it's a pretty good time. Right, and so the title, very literal, gun, spear, right? First kanji is gun, second one is spear, so yeah, gun spear. Rifle spear, it totally works as a translation, right? Makes a lot of sense. The idea is just you have these two things and you've stuck them together somewhat crudely, right? And we'll see why when we get to the description here. Okay, a trick weapon from the hand of the workshop heretics, the powder kegs, right? And from the hand of means it was made by, produced by, right? So this is a trick weapon created by the powder kegs. And we've talked about them at length already, so I'm just going to move on to the central section of this description. Okay, it is a prototype that consists of, the word consists isn't in there, right? So it's all modifying prototype. So prototype with a simple gun and spear joined together. And that's the first line of this central section here. And then we get to the second line where we have, this one's obviously much longer. Let's see. Said to be a thing modeled after a lost Cainhurst weapon. And when I say modeled after, the Japanese is a little bit of an interesting verb here because it's mimaneta. Now, maneta would just be like copied, but mimaneta is adding the verb for like look at, right? So it might imply that the powder kegs had some sort of visual reference for this lost Cainhurst weapon, right? They don't have the Cainhurst weapon itself, but they had maybe diagrams or they had some other sort of visual identifier, right? Maybe they found broken down versions of them and they could look at them for some reference. It's not clear what the visual part is, but there is a little bit of they looked at and then copied this lost Cainhurst weapon. How far you can take that, it's not really clear. Modeled after, I think, makes total sense. But, the idea, and again, right, we have the relatively crude, the obvious prototype, right, in the rifle spear. The two words of the two things just stuck together in the naming. All of that because it's sort of the less fancy version, the rediscovered prototype of the Cainhurst weapon. And there's a little bit of potentially interesting theming you can read into here, right? Where you have these, already in Bloodborne, you have cycles of civilizations. And especially when you start looking into what's going on in the Chalice dungeons, you've got these, sort of layers of history, and you can find all the, all these alternate versions of the same weapons in the Chalice dungeons, except, at least in Japanese, the, named versions no longer have the names in them. And it's all letting you know that whatever you have now, we've seen it before, right? So you have these repeated cycles of history going on with these different civilizations. We're getting a little bit of that in miniature with the weaponry here, right? There was this Cainhurst weapon that consisted of a gun and a spear put together, or maybe not literally a gun and a spear, right? But it was a weapon of some sort of sword or spear or what have you, right? Some sort of melee weapon combined with a firearm. And the powder kegs were like, hey, we're all about weapons that got kick. And so they liked the idea of sticking a rifle onto a spear, presumably. And so they tried it out. They made this prototype, and they had some sort of visual reference, maybe, to the Cainhurst weapon that was lost, right? And so you could see them working their way towards the thing of the past, the thing that was lost in Cainhurst. So that's very interesting. I don't know how much you can make out of that. I don't know how much that's supposed to be like a reference to these like repeated cycles of civilizations and the like way that history sort of repeats itself in Bloodborne. It might just be as simple as we thought it would be a cool idea to have one weapon modeled after another, but be a more like simplified version. I don't really know. But I figured I'd bring that up since it was something that occurred to me. Anyway, let's move on to the final section of the description here. Okay, it is not a weapon that has any noteworthy functionality as a single unit. However, trick weapons that can also become guns are special things that aren't found elsewhere, or special things that are like no other. So there you have it, right? It's the idea, it's a fairly unique weapon. Right? It's a unique weapon because you've got this combination of, like, it's a trick weapon, but you can also transform it and use it as a gun. Okay, and as far as the moveset is concerned, I think I have looked at this briefly before. We have the, like, several stabs, and then we've got the, like, more serious stab, which gets really serious with that. And then, of course, we transform it, and we've got these more horizontal strikes. If they're the second one is the most horizontal, the others are somewhat more limited. And then we have this running attack, which is crazy for the distance it covers, and this stepping attack, which also covers a pretty decent distance. And the unique fact of this weapon, boom, shoots things, right? So that's what we've got going on here. And I have no idea. I've never really played with this weapon, so I have no idea if I'm going to like it better in this form or in this form. We're going to figure it all out. But anyway, that's what we've got going on here. And before we head straight off to Cainhurst, there's another stop that I think I want to make, because there's more information we can get about Cainhurst itself. I'm just trying to think what the best way is to go there. I think it might be the Grand Cathedral, so I'll see you again soon. Okay, we're here in the Grand Cathedral, and I am just going to run for it, because I don't really have anything to do in the Grand Cathedral. We can say hello again to our friends, the amygdalas, that sort of line the walls here. Was pointing that out in the previous episode. And we can come out here and just run past these people with their frenzy-inducing, like, crucifix-type things. Crucifix, like, cross-type things. And just run straight down here, past the giant and all these other enemies with their, you know, scary abilities and their dogs that run after us more slowly than you might expect. And about the time we get this far here and turn this corner, I predict our pursuit will somewhat cease. Okay, the dog's still after us. Ooh, all right. I like being able to kill the dog in one hit, but that's not, like, super indicative of the sorts of enemies we'll be fighting. Of course, here we are, sort of by the entrance to the Forbidden Woods, and as I may have mentioned briefly in passing before, Alfred has relocated here, and, you know, way back when we first talked to him, he mentioned that he's not hunting beasts. He's not a beast hunter anymore. That's how he started out. That's not what he is anymore. Right now, he is a hunter of vile bloods. So, why don't we ask him a little bit about these vile bloods?
Oh, good to see you safe. Now, let's think up something to discuss. Just tell me what piques your interest. There's something I want to tell you. A bit of wisdom from the eminent master Logarius. Once, a scholar betrayed his fellows at Bergenworth and brought forbidden blood back with him to Cainhurst Castle. It was there that the first of the inhuman Vile Bloods was born. The Vile Bloods are fiendish creatures who threaten the purity of the Church's blood healing. The ruler of the Vile Bloods is still alive today, And so, to honor my master's wishes, I search for the path to Cainhurst Castle.
Okay, Alfred. While we're on the subject, why don't you tell me a little bit more?
In his time, Master Logarius led his executioners into Cainhurst Castle to cleanse it of the vile bloods. But all did not go well, and Master Logarius became a blessed anchor, guarding us from evil. Tragic, tragic times. That Master Logarius should be abandoned in the accursed domain of the vile bloods. I must free him, so that he may be properly honored in martyrdom. I bid you farewell. It has been a pleasure. May the good blood guide your way.
All right, Alfred. Everything you say is so important. So, we know he's hunting vile bloods, and the vile bloods are associated with Cainhurst. We have an invitation to Cainhurst. He's looking for the path to Cainhurst Castle. We've got a path to Cainhurst Castle. Not the most reliable of passages, as we'll soon see, but there's a good reason why I thought now was going to be a great time to talk to Alfred here. And it's difficult to say exactly what's going on in terms of the plot line, because he gives us enough information to know some important things happened in the past, but not enough to say what those things are. Right? Because once a scholar abandoned his fellows at Bergenworth. Okay, that's good to know, but which scholar? And at what time? In what sense? Right? And brought forbidden blood to Cainhurst Castle. What's that forbidden blood? Is it the old blood? Is it like I was talking about in the last episode? Like, I want to be differentiating between, like, the blood of communion, that's transfusion blood, and the blood that is rich in blood echoes, that is, like, the Great One cold blood and higher. And then also there's something to do, right? But at the same time, it sort of sounds like maybe that's got something to do with all of this. Can't really put that set of puzzle pieces together myself. There's also the idea of Ariana's blood. Ariana is descended from the same bloodline as the vile bloods in Cainhurst. And she's got, like, if you get her blood vials, I've talked about this before, you get blood that sort of heals you and then continues to bolster your stamina. Whereas most of the healing church blood heals you and continues to bolster your HP. And I've talked before about how I see these as sort of like opposed forces, where you can see why the different bloodlines have different effects, and so you can see why, like, the church might consider Ariana's blood forbidden, tainted somehow, because it's different from theirs. It bolsters a different aspect of you as a person than the healing church blood. How much does that tie into things? Does it not tie into things at all? Is that a false lead? Is that a blind alley? I don't really know. Right? Very important dialogue, with the actual meaning pretty obscure. And, like, I've heard it suggested that Lawrence was the person who betrayed the scholars and went to Castle Cainhurst. I've heard it speculated that it was Gehrman. And it sort of makes sense, right? Because if you're thinking back to the line that we sort of lost in that exchange where I think the Japanese had to make do with, like, existing voice lines, right? So they sort of cut, when they cut the idea of Gehrman, right? You think now as Gehrman did to betray me, it just became you think now to betray me, whereas the Japanese subtitle retained the idea of an additional person betraying, right? As opposed to just being Lawrence, right? You, as well as someone else, are betraying me now. So maybe the fact that Gehrman was removed from that dialogue is an indication that it was meant to be Gehrman. I don't know how well that fits with the rest of the story of the game, though. And how well does that play in with what we know about Gehrman from the DLC? And it's all again, this is sort of beyond me, right? This is one of the areas. There are areas where I feel like I can put together my own theories, and I've been sharing them. This is one of the areas where I feel like all I really can do is lay out puzzle pieces and hope that someone else puts them together better than I can, because I don't see a really strong connection. I think that one of my weak points in terms of understanding Bloodborne's lore has to do with the Vile Bloods. So I'm going to be trying to come up with maybe a better understanding of my own when we proceed forward with this playthrough, but I don't know if I'll succeed. So these are some of the things that are swimming around in my head. I figured, Alfred's got something to do with the Vile Bloods, and he's got information on the Vile Bloods himself, in addition to being able to help us out. You can summon him in some version of the game to help you against the blood-starved beast, and he does help us out by giving us information. But the information he gives us... Oh, this is not the turn. As a matter of fact, I don't think I needed to come up this way at all. But whatever. I'm here now. I'll go with it. I could have just kept going to the Grand Cathedral, couldn't I? Oh well. This'll work. I'm just so used to using this one particular point in the Cathedral Ward. So we're going to stick with it. Anyway, I'm going to be warping around. And if you'll recall, there was, on that invitation that we got, there was a line that mentioned we should go to the Cainhurst crossing, or something to that extent. So that's where I will see you next. Nope, I misspoke. Not Cainhurst crossing, Hemwick crossing. And it's a little bit vague, right? It's not 100% clear what exactly Hemwick crossing is, but if you remember back to the layout of Hemwick Charnel Lane, there is a rather important looking place where it looks like maybe there's something of like a milestone, like a large thing stuck in the road, and there are a couple of different paths that sort of cross at that point. Coming up to it right now. We've got these crossing paths, and I see all those enemies. So I need to very quickly get inside this carriage. And here we are. That was easy. Only here's the thing. What just happened is completely impossible. Right? We have dead horses, which we saw them. They had these big sort of black, furry, shaggy coats. And they were like winter hardy. And they were going through. And this was the carriage we were in. But there's no way we can get into it now. And it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. How would you even like maneuver this thing around on this particular bridge, right? It's really it's really hard to think how that would happen. And of course, even if you did get to turn it around, you've got this completely collapsed section here straight into the sea. And you can actually look across, right? And you can see other parts of, I guess, Yarnum, because I don't think Hemwick is that built up. You can also see, I think, this castle from Hemwick itself, if you sort of know what you're looking for. And that might actually be Hemwick over there. One of the few large buildings in Hemwick. So this is a complete impossibility. Isn't that interesting? Also, remember how we got that letter. We got that letter an impossible way, because our invitation to Cainhurst was placed on our sickbed, which we had to sneak in the back way of Iosefka's clinic in order to find. So there's no real way that we could actually physically get here, is there? And when I was talking about how Bloodborne is sort of playing with this idea of what's real and what's not, this is one of the biggest ways it does it. And I remember back when I was talking about, okay, well, maybe this is all a dream, maybe it's not, maybe it's a matter of narrative convenience. That's always been my approach. I tend to come at things in stories or in games from a very sort of narrative level. That tends to be my angle. And so I remember saying when I was standing in the source of the dream, the abandoned old workshop, that I thought, what's the best story here? Is it that the basis of the hunter's dream is another dream, or that the basis of the hunter's dream is a version of some reality, right? The version of reality that the hunter's dream is based off of. And I think it makes a better story to have the hunter's dream come from reality. And I think it makes a better story and not be a copy of a copy. Eventually it's all grounded in reality, maybe, but we never get to experience that. And I think similarly, what's the best way to present Old Yarnum? As a burnt out place where there's nothing but ashes, basically, or a place where the fires are still burning and you can see all the dead bodies and the smoke and the beasts are still running around, right? I think it's just a better presentation. And so that, again, that's always been my same approach here, right? What can we think of for an in-world explanation for this? I really don't think we can. The fact that the horses are dead by the time you arrive, what just happened? There's no great explanation. You can maybe explain the invitation, like I was talking about before, right? Maybe the imposter doctor carried something along and was like, okay, now I put this on the thing. But even if you can explain the invitation, I don't know how you explain getting here. And this is getting back to that idea of, okay, maybe this is another dream, because the way that we could explain this is if this world here was not actually reality, but another dream layer. And so the dream logic of this carriage showing up and getting us does make sense, if it's all a dream. Could it also make sense, though, if we ourselves are a dead spirit persisting in the hunter's dream, possibly in some sort of limbo, and then, or maybe purgatory, and then our spirit receives an invitation and is whisked away on some dream version of this carriage, and that's how we find ourselves standing here in reality, because reality has been sort of pervaded by a certain level of the nightmares. Maybe. Right? This is the theory that I'm saying is maybe a little bit too good to be true, because it allows me to explain this particular circumstance without saying it's all a dream, and potentially keeping that idea. I just worry that what else is there to base it on? It's a crazy lore theory for a reason. I think you can sort of find a little bit more justification. We're going to have to keep waiting for it. It's very late in the game that we get it. But we can sort of find a little bit more verification of the Nightmare Realms as afterlives, and therefore us being dead and sort of belonging to the other side, right? If you think of reality as being on sort of one side of things and the nightmare or nightmares being on the other side, and there is this sort of crossover that might be happening. It could tie in with what's going on with blood echoes, right? Because blood echoes are the will of the slain. And so if those things are inhering in the living, maybe as opposed to like finding a place to live being harbored by dreams and nightmares, maybe that's an indication that all of this is sort of this interpenetration of dream and reality. Yeah. Lots of things in this episode that just leave me baffled. Anyway, that's where I am now. That's where I am in terms of my thinking. I'm sort of liking this idea of the dream sort of being integrated into reality in a way that wouldn't normally be the case. Maybe otherwise, or maybe it's always the case, but it doesn't have to be. I don't know. Very, very vague idea, and a little bit possibly too good to be true, with very flimsy evidence. But I mean, if you ever want to make sense of Bloodborne, you have to make certain leaps, right? You can never, right? If you just go strictly by what we actually know, you can make sense of enough of the game to have a good time, but you can't really put everything together into like a really cohesive worldview. So, I don't know. Also, speaking of things that are impossible, well, the gate's just going to open itself for us. There's no, like, drawbridge that we're going to find where we could see someone lifting it up, right? We've got other instances of messengers opening gates for us, like pulling levers and opening gates. There's no indication of that here. None. There's no way that that gate should be able to go up, as far as we know. Maybe somewhere in here, right? That we can never access this part of Cainhurst, the castle. So, possibly. But, I mean, I don't think so. And even if there is, there's windows? I didn't see any windows out here for them to, like, look and see. Are they, like, way up high somewhere? Possibly. There's no great explanation for why this drawbridge should open. And that's not going to be the last time we encounter that sort of thing. So, again, I'm not sure what's going on with this place, but it sure is interesting. Also, there's statues everywhere. And this has been sort of a repeated thing, right? Yharnam has coffins everywhere. The Forbidden Woods has, like, graves and sculptures everywhere. There's graves in Yharnam, too. The Cainhurst, there's castles everywhere. Or castles, statues everywhere. All these statues of people. All over the place. What do they mean? I have no idea. Okay. Anyway. We now get to meet with one of the most terrifying enemies in the game. And there is a sort of... Actually, I can't remember if the weapon that I'm thinking of is relevant for this. Yep. You've got to come at them from the side. There we go. That actually went pretty well. These enemies are very stout, as you saw. Like, did not take a huge amount of damage from me. Just a tiny portion of their health bar that I do. But I can be persistent about it. Haha. Uh-oh. And as you see, oh, they dish out a lot of damage. Like, I'm instantly dead. Got a good look of their long, creepy tongues in the death screen there. So that's kind of fun. You know, I'm curious. I've never tried Molotov cocktails on them. Anyway, I was gonna say that there is a sort of weapon, right? So I talked about serrated damage a while ago. Does extra damage to beasts. And that is one sort of weapon. Or that is one sort of, like, interaction between enemies and a weapon type, where you can see... Okay, I thought I was doomed. Where you can see, like, you get that damage boost if you use the right weapon against the right enemy. That was a bad idea. And there's another type of, like, special hidden damage that is called righteous damage. And it deals extra damage to, like, Cainhurst enemies that are associated with Cainhurst anyway. Right. I was going to try the Molotov. Well, the answer will remain a mystery for now. Hey, stay right there. Thank you. All right. 224 compared to 155. All right, that is an increase, but I don't think it's a significant enough increase that I would want to rely on it. Ooh, hold on. Thank you for the warm blood gem. Ah! Oh, great. All right, yeah, I'll back off. I'll heal. I'll use this sort of fountain-type thing to my advantage. Nope. Oh, great. So those long tongues of theirs, I don't know if I finished this thought, are used for slurping up blood. They're sort of like ticks, right? As you can see just from the, like, visuals. And they're called blood lickers. And as we'll see, there we go. 2 down. Way too many to go. As we'll see, this place here, Cainhurst Castle, and as we've already gotten some indication, was the site of a slaughter, right? Because Alfred has told us, Master Ligarius and his executioners, they formed this giant party and they, quote-unquote, cleansed this place of the vile bloods. I don't think I need to, like, interpret that very much for you to understand that that was a massacre. They came and they killed a ton of vile bloods. And in doing so, right, the idea very clearly behind these blood lickers having gathered all around this area is that the slaughter was so intense that these enemies gathered to suck or, like, lick up all of the blood. And so they've just been feasting here. And I love the way that, like, this game is even using its enemies to tell a story. Just very cool. It ties, like, the enemy placement in with the story of the area that you're exploring. It's just well done. And of course, those are also the enemies that you can encounter in the Chalice dungeons if you perform a visceral attack. Because what happens? Blood gets everywhere, right? It's another way in which it makes sense. Not quite as, you know, upsetting as when you're considering the slaughter of all these people because one particular organization decided they had the wrong type of blood. But still, you know, it's an interesting way of having the enemy logic work in terms of the game. And I don't want to be directly in front because more of their attacks are relevant if you're directly in front of them. And if you stay behind them, I don't really want to demonstrate this. But if you stay behind them, they have a kick where they will just swing at you from behind. All right, I need to get out of this little defile here. Okay. There we go. Problem solved. Okay. Maybe for another one, I'm going to try in two-handed mode, because that's another thing I want to experiment with. Okay, and of course we have these things. How's this deal? Ooh. The rifle spear is pretty good at dealing with those worms. Most weapons, like, it's not worth fighting these things at all, because most weapons have a really hard time hitting these things. And as you see, you don't want your weapons to be having a hard time hitting these things. They leap at you and do a bunch of damage. But maybe, with the rifle spear here, and its ability to sort of stab in just the right way, because the other thing that you can do is you can, like, not lock on. Sometimes not locking onto these enemies is a better way to hit them than locking onto them. But the rifle spear, these targeted attacks, oh, see, there's more the issue I'm used to having fighting these enemies, where they're just impossible. But, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Alright, I see you. There you go, now you're dead. Boy, I'm already super low on blood vials. I think what's going to happen here is I'm going to, like, finish the outside of Cainhurst, and then I'm going to have to go and replenish my resources in the dream. Okay, so I can't just jab. I don't super want to test this, but... Oh, this actually works pretty well, too. The reason... maybe I spoke too soon. The reason I don't particularly want to test this two-handed version of the attack is because it's so unlikely that weapons work against these things. That's actually not too bad either. I was pretty happy when the, like, one-handed version was working like that. Yeah, I think the one-handed version, is just a little bit better. And I gotta remember, after 2, it's harder for me to follow up. Wow, I don't think I've ever dealt with those worms so handily. And even then, I'm down to 9 blood vials. So, maybe not so handily after all. Maybe I got a little carried away. Okay, I don't think there are any other items down here. I just want to make sure. Okay, we dealt with that blood liquor. And is there like something along a side? One of these side paths, maybe? See the other blood liquor. We'll deal with that in a different situation here. Come up this way. I feel like there's another way out of this little ravine. Okay, if I keep going all the way up. Are there any items like on the side? This more elevated portion of the ravine? Now I'm on the level of that blood liquor. Well, I see them up there too. Maybe I wait till they like turn around. Yeah, go away up there, and I'll fight you down here. You keep marching headfirst into that rock. I'm really happy with your position like that. And don't mind me while I just charge up this attack. Oh, it did reach. Wow. Oh, that's wild. Uh-oh. Now I'm in trouble. Am I gonna get the kick? Okay, didn't get the kick. That's fine. That's fine. You got a warm blood gem for me? No. Boy, that's those warm blood gems could be useful on that other character. Not so useful on this one, because if I recall correctly, they're all for strengthening your firearms. But yeah, to finish a thought from a very long time ago, I don't recall whether the blood liquors take extra damage from, you know, quote-unquote righteous weapons or not, because they're not really part of Cainhurst, even if they're associated with the place. But I can look that up at some point in editing and just verify very quickly whether or not that's the case. Good. Good. Ah, it went over my head. Oh, there's the kick. That could have gone worse. Alright, I'm going to leave them alone for now. I'm going to deal with you. Yep. Yep. Alright, come at me in a place where I can actually maneuver around you. There we go. Sort of, I suppose. I'm just going to constantly poke at you until you die. Perfect. Yeah, I think I'm developing a preference for this thing in its untransformed state. It's just nice and quick. Get that fast little stab. Except, of course, that charged attack. The transformed charge attack is very good. You can attack from very far away, and that's quite nice. Also note all the numbing mist that we're getting. Right? This is another thing. We knew that numbing mist was made in Cainhurst. We've just gotten a bunch of numbing mist. Right? And, of course, the Cainhurst tie. While we're talking about Cainhurst ties, right? I was talking about Ariana. Another Cainhurst tie is potentially the Imposter Doctor because of the numbing mist that we can receive as rewards. Uh-oh. That's why you don't want to be in front of them. And note that, unlike most of its big attacks that I was dealing with, I couldn't, like, rally back a bunch of health from that. Uh-oh. Okay. Good. I'm happy with how things ended up there. Uh-oh. Never mind, I take it back! I take it all back! All those, like, flurry of small hits means that, like, you just can't rely on the rally system like you would from one big hit. So, that is a particularly annoying attack to deal with. Okay. And that big one over there looks scary, but it's actually the least scary of all of these things. I don't have to worry about it at all. Oh, just keep circling around. There we go. Worked out beautifully. Okay. I think them remaining in this weird, like, twisted, sort of dead insect state is a relic that's unique to version 1.00 that I'm playing now, because I'm pretty sure I remember these things, like, fading out of existence in most other versions of the game that I've played. I'm not used to them sticking around as these corpses, even though I kind of think it's a nice touch, actually. I don't mind that they do so. Anyway, this thing right here is totally helpless. So I'm just going to attack it to death. It's licked up too much blood, and now it can only die in a big explosion. Very gross. Alright, you have anything? Yep, another warm blood gem for me. Thank you. Okay. Well, I've cleared out all the items on the side here. And I can't remember if I have to, like, wait for another door opening animation like I did on the side. Yep, here it is. So let's get this door to open. Very nice. We've made our way inside, out of the cold, into Cainhurst Castle, where you may have caught a brief snippet of weeping. However, that is not where I'm going to end this episode. I feel like there's an item somewhere over here. Did I get it already? Is it up high? No, that's a wall. I have this nagging feeling that I missed an item. And I don't want to miss items. I want to get them all. I think I'm just wasting everyone's time at this point. Okay, I think I must have gotten it, because I've been around this area like several times already. Anyway, like I said, I'm not actually going to go into the castle this time. I'm going to head back to the dream. And as such, like I said, I sort of like to leave things off in the dream when I can. I need to replenish my resources anyway. Anyway, all this work that I did here on the outside means that I can basically just run straight into the castle next time, and it'll be an easier way for us to pick up from there. But I'm going to say goodbye to you in the dream. I'll see you again soon. Also, while we're here, grab a level if I can. I should be able to. 38,000? I feel like that's around the point where yeah. Okay. Ooh, this is nice. Starting to come together. We've got vitality up to 30. There is one weapon. If I get my strength to 20, there is one weapon that I could add to this playthrough. And it works with my arcane being at 30 as well. So maybe I'll do that. Like I said, I want to show off as many weapons as I can in this playthrough. And it's getting to the point where that's going to be hard to do, because once you start getting bloodstone chunks are pretty rare, precious resources. You can really, especially in 1.00, they get a little bit more prevalent as they add in the DLC, and as they add in like changes to the insight shops, it gets easier and easier to come across chunks. But in the base version of the game, they're a rare resource, even if you're going and exploring the Chalice dungeons, which I intend to do, but even so, they're pretty hard to come by. So I've got to start being choosy about which weapons I take above +6, basically. But I think maybe it's worth bumping my strength up to 20 at some point in the near future, just so that we can add one more weapon to the playthrough. We'll see how many more weapons I can squeeze in. I want to get as many as possible. We'll find out. Anyway, I'm definitely going to get my vitality to 30, because that's going to sort of free me up to feel free to take levels in other things. And let's see how I'm doing on other resources, like blood vials that I just used a whole bunch of. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. So we're going to dump everything else into blood vials here. 49, it's a little lower than I'd like, but I think we can make it work. Maybe grab some more Molotov cocktails, since both my strength and arcane are pretty high, and both of those things improve the damage of Molotov cocktails, so they're going to continue to be relevant throughout the game. Also, I don't know if this was in the recording that got lost, but I've slightly changed my rune setup, because I've now got the, I've still got Moon, I've still got the Communion, so I've got a few more blood vials on me. I've now, rather than bolstering my like physical defenses, I figured max HP plus 10% was better than, let's see, which one is it that's like physical damage. Yeah, so physical damage reduction of 3%. You know, I feel like the max HP boost of 10% is going to work out to be a little bit more effective than that. So, I don't know, but I've been having fun with it so far, and especially now that my vitality is up to 30, that's getting more substantial all the time. Also, might as well repair my weapons. Do I have enough? I do have enough. All right. Repair both of those things. Okay. And next time, we can begin our explorations of the Castle Cainhurst in earnest. Actually get inside there. I think that does it for my hunt for the evening. Thank you all, as always, for joining me. And as always, again, I wish you good hunting.